Hey, welcome everybody to another exciting Chrome Apps Office Hours. This week we have a really special show. Paul and I decided that rather than go into some really crazy kind of like deep topic right before the holidays, we wanted to just show you a bunch of really cool stuff. We wanted to just hang out with you, answer some of your questions, dive into some of the things that you thought might be interesting, that we thought have been interesting in the last 6 months since we launched Chrome Apps. So with that, I'll let Paul say hi and introduce yourself. Paul, do you want to say hi? And
Hi, I'm Paul.
So this,
I'm based in London. And you're in Mountain View today.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. Normally we do this. I'm in New York. Paul's in London. This week I'm in Mountain View. We have the illustrious Lewis Gray helping us produce this event. So kind of a fun way to be doing things. So let's start. I want to show you a Chrome app that I put together this morning. Very special for this week because, I just was thinking as I was on my way into work this morning, I'm like, what's going on this week? Well, I'm in Mountain View. I got to get a couple of things done. And I was like, all right, there's this really cool event happening this week. So I decided I was going to sit down and pull together a real quick Chrome app. So let's go to my screen. I'm going to pull this guy up. And this is a little Chrome app. You can pull this up in the Chrome Web Store. I'll post a link to this in our post afterwards. But just in case you were curious how long it was until the end of the world, until December 21st at 11:11 UTC, we are now 2 days, 18 hours, 6 minutes, and 56 seconds. 55 seconds. Anyways, you get the point. Until the end of the world, and I feel
fine. Does it do time zones?
So yes, that takes into account time zones. So same number of hours left between us, Paul. So if I don't see you next week, Paul, actually, our Chrome Apps Office Hours next week would happen to fall on Christmas Day. I don't plan on working, so I won't see you next week this time. But I'll see you in the new year as long as this doesn't happen. How's that sound?
Yeah, good.
All right.
I think it sounds good.
Cool. Well, Paul, I know you had a couple of apps that you wanted to show. I've got a couple more that I want to talk about, and we'll take your questions. Lewis, if we could put the questions, the moderator link up, so if people have questions and they want to ask questions, please post your questions to our moderator link, and Paul and I will take those as we go along and take your questions. So with that, Paul, I'll pass it over to you, and you can talk about a couple, and then I'll come back and show a couple more.
Yeah, cool. So, today is all about kind of showing you some cool things that have been built with Chrome apps. Obviously, it's not kind of completely public yet in the sense that like normal consumers can't re-download these applications and install them into Chrome.
Yep.
But you can still kind of do some really cool stuff, and all of these are available in the web store. Most of these are already available in the web store, which I think was 2 weeks ago, where basically we just enabled it so that you could actually upload these and host them and get your users to test the applications. And one of them, which we can't actually get in the store just yet, is this newsreader, which we had actually built for Google I/O. But there was a lot of changes that went on in the web view, where it wasn't even called web view at the time; it was called the browser tag. There were a lot of changes that kind of were happening, and we didn't have this great situation where we could go off and show this application. But in the past couple of weeks, the web view API has settled down quite a bit. Yep. And I want to show you this application. It's pretty cool.
So Paul, before you go there, I want to just touch on two little things that you commented on that I think are really important. One, you can start uploading your apps to the Chrome Web Store. So if you're building a Chrome app today, you can upload it to the Chrome Web Store, but there are a couple of restrictions on that, right?
Yeah. You can't upload experimental APIs just yet because you've never been able to, but you can't do that. So identity doesn't work properly and WebView doesn't work. But they'll come out of experimental soon, and then you'll be happy and you'll be able to upload them.
Right. And then the other key thing is that if I go search for one of the apps that you've uploaded, Paul, Paul, are you on this side of me, or you're on one side of me? So here, Paul, that way, maybe. If you upload it, users can't find it. They have to actually go and know the URL, and it's like, Chrome Web Store dot something really big, hang on to make sure I'm on screen here, really big long URL /something/something. So best thing to do if you want to share these with your friends, upload them, use a link shortener, and give the shortened link to your friends, so that way they can easily go in and grab them.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Once we kind of launch this fully, you'll be able to search them and they'll be aggregated properly inside the web store.
Right.
But yeah, right now it's still experimental. We're still learning about how you as developers want to interact with the web store and how users will want to download the applications as well. Which I think we can show more stuff in a later episode.
And I think the only other thing I want to point out for folks who are watching today, there are still a couple of bugs around what's required and what's not. So it may say something's not required when it actually is. I think that's the way most of the bugs are. It'll tell you, oh, it's not required. You go to hit publish, and it comes back and says, you got to go put this in.
The flow is not that great at the moment.
Yeah.
It'll get better.
And we're working on that, so please make sure you tell us about those kinds of things if you do find them.
Yeah. So, shall we show you this application?
Yeah, let's have a look.
Works? So this is really cool. I really like this application because you can basically query Google News. All this data is coming from Google News, the RSS feed and Atom feeds. It's completely unofficial. It's like an application that you would build as a normal developer. But it's really cool because, let's have a look at something that's not shedding light in the dark ages. You can open up an article, then this opens up the web view, and when the web view works, which something's happened, it's not quite working just yet. Right now.
Damn it.
So what happens normally is that the actual content will come into this application here and be displayed. Now the really nice thing is if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see like picture of Nelson Mandela. It's kind of like slightly grayed out and blurred. There we are, it's loaded up.
Cool.
It's pretty cool. I think it's probably on network connections a little bit crazy at the moment. You can press escape, kind of get out of those articles. It's pretty cool. Scroll down. There's a whole lot of really nice stuff. And I'm going to tell you about this image. These are all remote images, and I'll show you, well, I'll show you. I'll tell you about a little framework that we've built which enables you to download images that are hosted on the web and store them in the local HTML5 file.
Right, because like you can't just say image with a source equals something else, or source equals some remote server.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So you can't do that, but we've enabled it so that you can, in a way, a little bit. And we've got a library that's on GitHub as well. And then you can do things like filter by top stories when they work as well. I've got to feel my network's a little bit slow on this machine at the moment. Wow. There we are. Let's go back to that one. Right. So the good thing is, even if I've not got an internet connection and something's going crazy, all the articles and information is cached. So that it's all basically stored in IndexedDB. You query the categories for the list of articles that you want inside a particular one. And then you can do nice things like, for instance, flip between like different countries as well. So if you're Spanish and you want Spanish news, you'll go off and query the Spanish Google News sites.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty nice. We've had it around since Google I/O at least.
Yeah.
But until WebView kind of started to stabilize a little bit, we've not kind of pushed it too much. But the source code is on our GitHub project as well, so you can go out and check out how we've done everything as well.
So and that's cool. On the GitHub samples library, our like GitHub Google Chrome / Chrome app samples place.
Yes. Yeah, exactly right. So let me.
All right.
I'll go and get it in a minute.
Yeah, we can. Yeah. Actually, Lewis, if we can put that lower third up on, there should be the samples one. So you should be able to see it somewhere. It should be like right down about there. So you can go see that.
So can I show you guys something as well about the code? So this is the actual commit that I did the other day, which if I go full screen should make it a little bit easier to read. So this is the commit I did the other day to the Newsreader app, and it's Google Chrome / Newsreader app on GitHub. So basically it doesn't look like I've done much, but essentially I've removed a whole lot of code that we normally use to actually go and get the remote image from the web, which is normally a big XML HTTP request. Okay. We store it in the file system using the filer.js, and there's actually quite a lot of code just to do a relatively small amount of process. So we've removed all this, and there was a couple of places it was in. It was code that was duplicated all over the place, and we replaced it, if we get to the right place, with this thing called RAL, and basically it's the resource asset loader, which is a project that we've written. It's also on our GitHub project. I've enabled debug because I want more information at the back of it.
Right.
I do this thing called qstart, and now what happens is whenever you add something to the resource asset loader, essentially what will happen is it'll go and say, well, I need to go and download this asset.
Okay.
It'll bring it in, cache it in the local HTML5 file system, and and then you'll be able to consistently access it as well. So every time you access that image, it will go and get it from the file system. It's got a whole lot of other nice things about caching. So if there's cache headers that say cache is only for so if it says cache is for only 24 hours, it'll cache it for 24 hours, but it'll still use it if you're offline.
Nice.
The actual asset load as well is pretty cool, and one of my colleagues, Paul Lewis, did all the work on this. It's pretty cool because it detects when you're online and offline, and if you have requests for images, like in the queue, say 100 requests, and maybe some in flight to actually get to a service, like to get the image, and you're actually offline, well, what it does is it puts it into a background process where basically when you go back online, it'll then restart it up and then go and fetch the articles, like
that's
fetch all the
brilliant.
items that you need.
It's
kind of like...
This is the one you said, sorry, you said it was written by Paul Lewis.
Yeah, Paul Lewis and our team wrote this about 3 months ago, and we've only just published it this week.
Awesome. That's super cool. I know for a lot of folks who are building newsreader apps, who are building apps that consume a large amount of data that sits locally on the user's computer, or sits that you want to be able to pull down. This is a really important thing because otherwise, like, it's great to just pull down JSON data, right? Like, that's all awesome. But if you want to pull images, you want to pull video, you want to pull anything, any binary data, you can base64 encode it, but that adds I think it's like 30%, if I remember right, to the download size plus storage size, plus it's a pain in the butt to encode and decode. This means it works, and with all that caching, all those caching features, that's pretty slick.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The other thing as well that he does, he's got this idea of a manifest, and you can host the manifest on a server. Okay. And what'll happen is, if you request that manifest, it will go and get the manifest, get the list of images and like assets that you need, and then you can use it so you can proactively cache things, say in a web worker in the background, or use an alarm to wake your application up at 7 o'clock in the morning. Go and get the manifest, and then download all of the stuff ready for it to be consumed later on.
Oh, perfect.
So there's actually a whole load more stuff in this than we've got actually even time to kind of tell you now.
Yeah, we should definitely cover this come the new year. This is really powerful.
We only launched it kind of last week, and we're still doing a whole load of stuff. There's a couple of bugs, a couple of issues that we want to try and solve.
Awesome.
So let me just show you the next two pieces of code. We have this one here, which is data source, which is on the image. This is just basically a data attribute where we encode the source. And then what happens is the framework, it doesn't do it just yet, but when it detects an image inside the page that's got a data source attribute, the idea is it'll be able to say, well, you know what, I need to go and queue that to go and request. It doesn't do that quite now. You have to programmatically go and request the image. Okay. But it's only 2 or 3 lines of code. It's not too much, but we want to get it so that you can just drop an image into the page, and all of a sudden it starts to work. The really cool thing about this as well, you can even specify placeholder images. So you might have like, say you were, New York Times or someone like that. And you might want to put your logo inside a special image, which is always displayed until the actual image asset comes in. Right. So there's a couple of things you can do around that. But if we look here, these like 4 or 5 lines of code here. This is literally all I need to actually make the requests to the remote service. So I basically detect an image in the DOM. I say, go and get me a remote image and add it to the queue and auto start, so automatically get the image. Right. And then the system will just work out what to do because I passed an element object into the like the remote image object. It will then basically go and say, well, you know what? Once I've got the image, I'll go and attach it to the actual image itself, so it's displayed. If it's already cached in the file system, it'll just go and display that cached version as well. Cool. So it's pretty cool, and we're going to try and get it so you don't even have to have these 2 lines of code. But if you really want to kind of manage that yourself in your own little process, then that should be completely possible for you to do as well. Nice. And that's actually all the code. Most of the actual this change in on the project was actually me removing code. Nice. So this saved a good chunk of code then and made things easier for you to use. Yeah, exactly. And the actual app itself right now uses it. So the Chrome News app is using this. There is a bug here where if we request the same image twice, it goes blank. So we can see a couple of the images are white out, but we can fix that. That should be pretty cool. But I encourage everyone to go and check it out and see what it's like. So nice. It's pretty cool. I may actually have to go play with this myself. Yeah, cool. Yeah. I added this in last week, so I thought it'd be good to kind of show you guys what's happening. Yeah, definitely. So Should I jump onto my next app, or?
Actually, Lewis, can we get the questions link put up? And I want to show one of the apps that I did for some of the GDL stuff, and then we'll pop back over to you. So one of the things that with all of these GDL sessions that we have is you'll notice there's those lower thirds that get created and put on all the bottoms, and they're pretty much consistent. They say the show name and the link to the particular thing, and oh look, there's my name down there. Well, in doing those kinds of things, every time we did that, we always had to open up like Photoshop, or you had to open up some kind of like graphic editor. You had to go in, make all the change. You'd make a change, save that one. Make the change, save the next one. Make the change, save the next one. And it really got to be a pain to go and do. So one of the things that I wanted to do was try and make that simpler for me and simpler for all of the people who were doing these GDL things. And I was like, well, how do I do that using images and graphics? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, I guess what I could do is I could create a bunch of divs and do it that way. So that was one option. But then the other thing, I was like, well, I've got this stuff as transparent pings to begin with. So I could use Canvas, go place everything on, apply the text that I want, just using the draw text in Canvas, and then save it as a ping. So I went and wrote this app. So I'll bring my app up, and Lewis, if we can bring my app up on screen. You'll see that, let me get rid of this so that we don't have this guy up. And I guess we don't need my end of the world app anymore. So we've got this Gdl Lower-Third Generator. So basically what it lets me do is I can go and type in the name of the show I want. So hey, we're Chrome Apps, and I can put in my name. So Pete, LePage. If I want to center something, I can put a bunch of other names. So on this one I want Pete, and I want Paul, so I separate them with semicolons. I can put in all of the links to our moderator, everything. I can choose what different styles I want. And then what I did was it just uses, I created a generator call that goes in, generates each individual ping, and then it saves those pings as transparent PNGs. And then I used a really cool zip JavaScript library so that when I go and hit generate here, it gives me that ability to download. So I'll save it here on my desktop. And here in a sec, okay, well, it won't save it to my desktop this time. Let's try that once more. Save, desktop, there we go. Is it hiding on my desktop somewhere? All right, here, I'll do it this way. Desktop, there it is. So sure enough, there's the zip file. If I open that up, there's all my downloads files. And now I've suddenly got all of my lower thirds generated so that I don't have to go and recreate every one every single time. It's a quick, easy way for me to be able to do these. So if you're looking at ways to create graphics or create images, this is another tool where if you're just having to consistently redo things over and over again, this was a really easy way to be able to do this. I was talking to Lewis yesterday. I was showing him the app. He was like, that's awesome, but I need one that's just a nice, simple one. And I didn't tell it to create this, but like where it just has the lower third without any names. So went in, added a quick one of those. And now we have an easy way that we can generate those lower thirds without having to do anything crazy. So, Paul, I'll pass it back over to you, and you could show your next one.
Yeah, cool. So this one is from, well, let me get his name, actually. Anyway, I'll get it in a minute, but there's a third-party developer who has actually done some really cool stuff. He's tried to make his own application. He's uploaded it to the store, and it's called Clean CSS. Okay. I think the best thing to do is we'll try and get the link later on.
All right, yeah, we can add the links. We'll do a post after today's show, as well as I'll try and add the comments to our to the YouTube video if you want to go check those out.
Yeah. It's pretty nice. It's like you do this thing and you put this in. And
Paul, before you continue, is it easier that you could bump that font up? I know it's gonna be hard for our viewers to check that.
So this is actually a problem that we've got generally inside Chrome apps, is that it's actually hard to bump the font. So the normal things that we have don't work.
All right.
So and that's a really great point. I believe there's a bug filed on that. If there's not a bug filed, please go file one. New.crbug.com and let us know so that we can get it. And if it's not filed, or if it is filed, just make sure you go star it so that the developers know that this is a big thing we want fixed.
Yeah. But the general idea behind this is that it takes some relatively large CSS files and then compress it down into something that's a lot smaller.
Cool.
It's got some really nice things. So you got copy to clipboard, and I don't know whether you'll be able to see this properly, but press copy to clipboard, it makes everything smaller, blurs it out, and then send it to the clipboard. Which, if we then put it back in, there we go. There, it's been minified in. So it's pretty cool, right? It's like taking some of your kind of clipboard data, minified it, copied it to the clipboard, and these things you can't quite do in the normal web applications. So that's pretty nice. I'll get you the guy's name who actually wrote this because I've actually forgotten right now.
Sorry about that.
But I want to show you a couple of other applications as well because they're pretty cool. We talk about this one quite a lot, but I use this all the time. This is the IRC bot, or the IRC app that we've got.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's also in the store. If you actually type in CIRC Chrome into Google, you'll be able to find it because it's been indexed, because people have linked to it. But the source is available on Github as well, and you can do it. And this is using normal native sockets. So does Liverpool is a place that I work in Liverpool. So let me just say hello, everyone. Oh, wow, caps lock. Hello, everyone. They might reply with something nice or not nice. I don't quite know.
That's the wonderful thing of live to air broadcast. All right. Hopefully they'll be nice.
Yeah. But it's pretty cool, right? I mean, if we go to the actual code, if we get rid of this little bit side, it's normal HTML. The source as well, you probably can't see it very well, but this is just the thing, Chrome.socket. Let's have a look. Flipping heck.
All right, so
that's all there is.
All right.
It's pretty crazy. It's like they've written the API. They just use a normal socket interface.
Sweet.
It's no more than just normal basic JavaScript. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
It's pretty nice.
Nice.
So I have another app. Should we show another app?
So let's show one more app, and then we have a couple questions in our queue. So we'll take those questions and we'll wrap up for the day and go from there.
So it's going to be pretty cool.
All right. I like cool.
So this is a pretend service that I wrote.
Okay.
It's a Google shortener. So basically, this was actually in like something that you were doing with the links, and you're manually going through and shortening the links and everything. Is that I wanted to integrate with the actual what's it called? The API.
Oh, that API thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to integrate with the API for Google, and I think last week we talked about the identity API.
Yep.
And the identity API at the time was only third-party services, not Google-based services.
Right.
And that's because we hadn't exposed the actual admin interface for you inside the API console.
Yep.
Evening, Liverpool, from Liverpool at least. So anyway, we hadn't exposed that. It's really brand new announcement. First to hear it, if you're watching this right now, is that you can actually go to your developer console and choose or create a brand new client ID for all the Google services. So Google authentication should work quite well now. I'm yet to try it because even though this is a Google service, I actually just use normal third-party authentication flow. So let me just prove that this works.
So like that, I just want to say that again because I think that's a really cool fact and feature. You just use the normal third-party authentication features to access Google APIs because the Google authentication stuff wasn't quite there and still maybe a little not quite ready for prime time, but the third-party auth stuff is, and that's pretty slick.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I'll shorten the URL, and it should appear. There it is at the bottom. That's the short URL that we've just created. And yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot more stuff. I only made this in a couple of hours, but a lot of it was me just trying to make sure that the Google APIs were working with authentication and the identity API.
Nice. And
just because it's built off the back of OAuth 2, it means it pretty much works straight away. I know that we do some extra things with like refresh tokens and some other stuff, but I've just chosen to ignore that because actually what's happening behind the scenes here is that even though the authentication didn't work, it tries to authenticate every single request. So I'm not storing an access token, I'm getting a brand new one every single time. So should we have a quick look if I can get it up properly?
So I've got a couple of the questions up on our moderator. So why don't I start with those while you pull some of them up?
I'll get the console up so I can show you. Can I just show you how this actually how you actually go about creating one?
Yeah.
So you use the normal Google APIs, code.google.com/APIs/console to create your project, and then you do something quite simple where you go to API access. You create an OAuth2 client ID. Give it a name, so test X maybe. That's a good name. And you normally have a list of options: web application, service account, and installed application. Well, it turns out Chrome applications are actually installed applications and not pure web applications that live on the web. So you press the installed application, you select Chrome application, and you put your extension ID in. So if you had your extension ID, I'm going to say it's that. Hopefully this will work. It's just a random one.
Always love random.
Yeah, it didn't work.
All right.
But you basically put in your own extension ID. Let's do that one for now. So this should work. Create client ID. And then we've got the client ID and application secret that we need. And that's all you have to do to start accessing Google services. And you can select the list of services that you want to access. I would normally select Google, link shortener, and I'd be able to access it straight away. And I'd use the Google authentication. Now, I just want to say the interesting thing about the Google authentication, why it's different to third party, is that because we can, when the user installs the application, we can prompt them to say, this application wants to access your Google Docs or your Google Drive and those types of things, which we can't do because we don't know how every other third party API works.
Right.
So for Google services, you can get that install prompt,
cool.
which is important, and which is why you need the special ID.
Awesome. All right, well, let's pop over to our questions. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes left before we need to wrap up for today. So our first question from Adam in San Francisco. He wants to know, should chrome.runtime.lastError be checked on every call that uses a callback? How should Chrome runtime last error be used? I'm working on a library that interfaces with a Chrome app via Dart, and most of this is wrapped in futures.
Yeah.
Paul, what's your take on this?
Yeah, you have to check last error. I mean, the last error is pretty much always populated from the last error that happened. So if one of your API methods failed, when you called it, then you should check last error. We don't have the on success and on failure that you'd expect from, say, a normal kind of purely web application. We don't have futures either. That's not to say that we couldn't wrap it up and have a JavaScript API, which makes it a little bit easier. That kind of knows when the last error did occur and not to kind of overwrite it, because basically the last error stays populated all the time.
Okay.
So if you make a request, it could be like to a Chrome specific API. It could be 3 requests down later on where you actually go and check last error and it's errored. Well, has it errored? Was it that API? You don't quite know. So you do have to check, but it might be better if we kind of come up with a better interface and library, and maybe we kind of test that with a JavaScript shim to start off with.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because it is a little, honestly, it's a little bit awkward trying to interface with, say, IndexedDB and then integrate with the Media Gallery API. And these are two things which are like different APIs essentially, and they've got different semantics for errors and callbacks. So we might have to kind of write a little JavaScript shim to make that a little bit easier. But right now, you just have to check. That's the simplest thing is you have to check.
All right. So James from Ontario, my hometown, or I guess my home province, wants to know, do Chrome apps run agnostic to the operating system, or are there cross-platform issues that he needs to keep in mind? Should I bother testing on Windows and Linux if he's developing on Mac? Can I safely assume that my app will be fabulous across the board? And that's a really great question. And I would say in the 99% case, your app is going to be fabulous across the board. There's a couple places where I think you do want to spend a little bit of time testing, and that's going to be things like Serial, USB, and Bluetooth. Those are the 3 that just come to mind for me that I just want to do a little bit of extra testing just because the stacks in those particular places are a little bit different. Paul, are you... Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to say the same thing. I agree with you completely there, is that the actual render and the basic things that you'd expect to work should just work.
You're running Chrome.
I mean, you're running Chrome. I mean, there's no excuse not to test.
Right.
But the assumption should be that it's going to be a lot easier, and
Right.
a lot easier to kind of test across them. And like you said, the differences are the hardware APIs.
Exactly.
So, for instance, Bluetooth might not work on Windows because we don't have access to the stack, whereas we've got better access to the stack on Chrome OS.
Yep.
And then we've seen in some bugs on the actual Chromium apps mailing list as well, where the serial port didn't work because we hadn't got the regular expression right to filter out the actual COM ports with serial ports.
Yeah.
We hadn't got that right for Windows, so it didn't work at all. So those are the types of things that you'd have to check.
Yeah. But the point will be, we want to get it as close as possible so that you don't have to worry about that. So we have a little bit of work to do, but we think you guys should test as well. So I'll go for a question from Belgium next. Linux is in the base plugin for playing games or video on Facebook is sometimes it works. I'm actually going to come back to this question because I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
I think there's a plugin that doesn't work on Linux.
Yeah.
The only thing I can say is file a bug. It's using Chrome for Linux 11 or 12. We're at 25. Yeah. Nearly. So file a bug. I'm not exactly sure whether it'll get fixed because I don't believe we backport that far to these fixes.
Yeah, we might.
That's the whole point of the auto update system is that we look to maintain 3 versions at least.
Yeah.
Cool. Should we go on to the airborne question?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So does the Identity API support older versions of OAuth 1.0, 1.0a? It's a really good question. So the thing is that the Google Auth API endpoint uses OAuth 2, and we've coded it to work with just OAuth 2. The third-party format, or the third-party authentication launcher, essentially, it's agnostic, so we don't actually care, in theory, about the type of authentication you're using. You could use some weird authentication system which returns a session ID in the query parameter, which you can then take out for your admin panel to push into your app and a whole load of other stuff. You can do those type of things as well. And the idea behind that was that if you have OAuth 1 and OAuth 1a applications, is that in theory you should be able to do it. I haven't tested it because I don't like OAuth 1 and I want to stay away from it for ages.
I think we might have one person who likes it and his or her name would be Airborne.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that normally what happens is that the authentication APIs in most third-party services, they can't redirect to anything that's not HTTP or HTTPS URLs.
Right.
So every single app at the moment has a Chrome extension scheme in your actual URL, which you won't be able to redirect to. And Instagram kind of worked last week, but that was kind of a fortunate coincidence. If you look at the if you look at the Foursquare application, man, I can't get the apps right. If you look at the Foursquare application that we've got on our sample repository as well, that uses OAuth 2, but it's using this redirect to a special domain that we own. So basically what it is, I think it's your extension ID.chromiumapp.org. And that's the redirect URL that you can send the third-party services that use OAuth 1 or OAuth 1a back towards inside your application.
And we'll redirect it for you automatically.
Yeah, and we'll do the redirect from there.
Cool.
It might not work very well. I would test it, and if you have any feedback about these things, let me know. And we'll kind of get it working. But the majority of people are moving to OAuth 2, and OAuth 2 works very, very well at the moment.
Well, Paul, I think that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me from London. I hope you have a really great holiday.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
James Doyle, he did the CSS cleaner.
Awesome. James Doyle from Ontario. That was his question. All right. Well, James,
thank you very much.
Thank you. So I want to thank everybody for joining us this week. We're going to be back in the new year. We'll probably start back, I want to say it'll be the second week of January with our Chrome apps office hours. We've got some really exciting stuff planned for 2013. Things like push messaging, notifications. We're going to got great new authentication stuff. We have a ton of stuff that we're really excited about that we think you're going to be really excited about. So thanks for joining us. Paul, thank you.
Thank you
I can't wait to see you all in the new year. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.